Okay, relative minor keys and relative major keys, actually. What this means is that every major key has a cousin, and that cousin is a minor key. So for every major key, there is a minor key that has the exact same key signature. Okay? So another way to think about that for a minute is that we know all our major key signatures, right? If we look over here, here's our major key signatures, right? These are the ones that we know how to deal with right now, right? There are no separate minor key signatures because the major key signatures get used again for the minor keys. They're just different, right? So for example, what we just learned here is that the key signature for C major is the exact same key signature that we would use for A minor because they are relatives. C major and A minor are relative keys. They share all the same notes. They have a different tonic, but they have the same notes. Weird, right? Check this out. Let's take here's our A minor, and let's make a C major scale right after it. Oops. Okay, so what we're going to hear here is an A minor scale going up, and then we're going to hear a C major scale going up. Clearly I skipped something here. Skipped my G. I'm missing a note. There we go. Okay, so we're going to hear an A minor scale and then a C major scale. Okay, now think about this. It's all the same notes. One of them is just going to use A as a tonic, and the other one's going to use C as a tonic. That means this one, the one that's using A as a tonic, is a minor scale. The one that's using C is a major. So let's just hear how that works out. All the same notes, just different tonics, right? And that is where some of that names for the scale degrees that we talked about in a previous section of this class starts to matter a lot, because the pull of the tonic is a little bit different in a minor key, right? Because let's take, for example, the dominant, right? In this case, we want the dominant to pull towards A, which is an E. So the E pull towards A. Over here, it's a G, and the G we want to pull towards C. If the G pulls towards A, then we've got a confusing key thing happening, because that feels like an A minor scale all of a sudden. So we'll talk more about that later. But for now, remember that this is a relative key. So how do we find what the relative is of a key? Okay, here's the trick. There's always a trick. There's always a pattern. To start with a major key and find the minor, the relative minor. Remember, relative means uses the same key signature. What we're going to do is we're going to take the sixth. The sixth note is the relative. So if I'm in a C major and I go up to the sixth, that's an A. If I now rewrite this scale using A as the tonic, and I just keep going up here all the way to A, I now have an A minor scale. So if you go up to the sixth, that is your relative minor. You can also, sometimes like when I'm trying to think fast on this, I go down. So this is my tonic. You go down 3, and that gets you to your relative minor. If you are in a minor scale and you want to find the relative major, you go up 3. So here we have A minor. What is the relative major of A minor? It is going to be C major, the third. So I like to think of, to find the minor, I like to think of going down 3, and to find the major, you go up 3. So let's try that. Let's do this just by key signature, shall we? Okay, here is the key of A major, right? So this is the key of A major. So this is not the same as what we just did, right? Because this was the key of A minor. And we found the relative major, but now we're going to go the other way. It's not going to be C major. So A major, the relative minor, what are we going to do? We have a major scale or major key. We got to find the relative minor. So what we're going to do is we're going to, let's put, we're not going to write out the whole scale here, but let's do just the notes. So here's our tonic. And what we need to do is find the sixth. So we need to go down 3 notes. F sharp, don't forget, F sharp. So that means the relative minor of A major is F sharp minor. So the key signature of F sharp minor is the exact same key signature as A major. Wild, huh? Let's do another one. Let's do F. Okay, this is the key signature of F. So how do we figure out the relative minor of F? We're going to make an F. And then we're going to go down 3 to D. So D minor has the same key signature as F major. They are relatives. Another way to say that would be the relative minor of F major is D minor. Let's try going the other way. Here's the key signature of B minor. Okay, B minor. What is the relative major? Oops. So what we're going to do here is let's make a B, and we're going from minor to major now, so we're going to go up 3. It's going to be D, D major. Now you may have been able to figure that out faster than I just did it by just reading this key signature, since we know how to read key signatures, which is an interesting point. When you see a key signature, all you can really tell now is 2 possible keys that it could be in. Like we could look at any song, you could look at the key signature, and let's say the key signature looks like this. Okay, you start it, you pick up a piece of music and you look at that and you say, well, I know for sure, probably, that this is in one of 2 different keys. It could be in E major because that is the key signature for E major. Or it could also be in the key of C sharp minor because this is also the key for C sharp minor. Now, how did I figure that out? I just thought E. Here's an E. I went down 3 to a C sharp because sharp is in the key signature. Sharp is in the key signature. And I thought C sharp minor. So if you see a song with this key signature, it's in one of those 2 keys. And if you want to figure out which is correct, you start looking at the chords, you start looking at the melody, you start kind of analyzing the piece, and then you can determine usually pretty fast if it's in E major or C sharp minor. Sometimes, though, it can be kind of ambiguous as to which one it's in. But it's usually pretty easy to tell once you get looking at the individual notes. But this key signature is really only telling us, it's narrowing it down to 2 possible keys, a major key and a minor key. Okay, so that is the relative key. That's how that works. So finding the relative minor from a major key, we're going to go down 3 to the 6th of the major scale. It's going to tell us what the tonic of the minor scale is. Going the other way, if we have a minor scale and we want to find the major scale, we're going to go up 3 to figure out what the tonic of the relative major is. Okay? Once you start doing this a lot, this is, to me, the easiest way to remember all of our minor keys. Because I know my major keys pretty well. So I can pretty easily do that quick calculation and find what the key of the relative minor is, right? So get good at this process. Practice finding relative majors and relative minors. It's a really valuable skill to have, and it keeps you from having to memorize the key signature of every minor key, which, as you probably know by now in this class, I'm not a huge fan of just huge amounts of rote memorization. So we want to avoid that if we can. But if you memorize this one principle, you'll be able to find the minor key for any major key. Cool. Now there's one more trick that we have, and let's jump to a new video to talk about that.